Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're bringing you a very special video. This is a showdown between Blood Rage, Rising Sun, Ankh, Gods of Egypt, the mythological trilogy from Eric Lang Guillotine Games and CMON, and this amazing arc by Adrian Smith here. Fantastic packages, fantastic games, all of them, but which is the best in my opinion, which really stands out above the rest, and why. We're going to go ahead and, with a quick little explanation, some pros and cons, go through each of these different games, as well as their expansions, the additional content. We're really going to dive deep into this one and just kind of talk about it all, but not extremely deep. I won't have you here forever, but I do want to give you a good overview of everything. That way you know where I'm coming from, what things that I'm liking, disliking in all of these. So let's go ahead and start off with the first game of the trilogy. This is Blood Rage. Blood Rage is a drafting game where you're going to be playing 3 ages, and in each age you're going to draft a hand of 6 cards and use these cards as well as action points in the form of rage to take actions on a main central board. Now the asymmetry in this game comes from those cards. Every round you're going to be drafting them, you're going to be putting them onto your board as upgrades or using them in battle as battle cards or summoning them as monsters to get all these super cool powers and abilities. So I really like this one. One of the pros in this game has to be that drafting as a whole. It's the only one that really employs a heavy drafting element at the start of the game, and it really follows through. It feels tense. Every card feels powerful when you take it. There's always a tough choice because every card is something you're going to want to play. And then the actions in the game are so simple, so streamlined. I love how this works. You're playing a card, you're moving, you're attacking, or you are summoning a unit, and that's it. That's really the limit of what you're going to be doing. You can also do some questing in there, but once again, that's another super simple action. But that's it. You have 5 choices on your turn, and this cycle continues over and over again, but each of those choices is so tense because the timing is so important. I love the way that the board changes. It gets tighter and tighter as the game goes on. There's a lot to love in Blood Rage. Now that being said, one con might be for you that some of the abilities and strategies in this game can seem a little powerful. In addition, some cards might catch you off guard if you don't know they're there, but once again, that is very easily taken care of if this is a game that you're playing at least more than once. You're able to understand the impact of certain cards as well as strategies and counter strategies to stop those. So I think that it's not a huge issue, but that could be a con for you. Now let's go ahead and jump to the expansions for Blood Rage. The first one here is the Gods of Asgard. This one's going to introduce the Norse pantheon here of all these different gods that are going to influence areas. This one is extremely easy to implement. You simply place a god in a region, it affects how that region plays. I really like this one. It adds to the variability of the game, and it's one that you can easily bring in and bring out, but I really like this one because it really incentivizes you to draft differently, employ different strategies, and really play around and with the gods that are present. So that's a cool one. You might not like this one because it does have a bit of upkeep added each round, but overall I think that this one is an easy include, and it's one that you can play with or without, and I really like it. In addition, this one has a lot of Kickstarter exclusives. So it actually got 2 Kickstarters, one for the original promos and then one for the secondary ones, and this was an additional box. The first one you had simply just an additional clan, some upgraded components, some 3D components, but the big thing here were the monsters. You had the Fenrir monster, you had the giants, you had Fenrir, and you also had the Mystic Troll. So these 4 original boxes here. They added some new unique monsters that I thought were really, really cool, really well done, and I thought they added some new interesting strategies to the game. Nothing too game-breaking, but a lot of fun. Now, the new promos box that came out came not only with reprints of those old monsters, just with different names, it also came with golden versions of the gods, which are just really nice. They really pop on the table as opposed to those small mini gods. You also have the pillage tokens, and then you have 4 additional monsters on top of the reprints of the old ones. And, 3 additional monsters. And these monsters are so cool. They're so unique. Some of them really punish or support specific strategies, and some are more utility monsters. And I think that is so fascinating, so interesting. I really like the inclusion of these, and I think they just really freshen up the game. Just having a couple more cards is a big deal. You see them, and the way they interact with all the other cards is huge. Now, you may feel that these promos might add a little bit of bloat to your game, because once again, the decks, they just simply add the cards into the deck, and that might ruin kind of the consistency. You're not able to see every card every time, but I do think that this adds to the unpredictability of the deck and kind of having to pivot on the spot what your strategy might be. So you could see this as positive or negative, but that's that. Now, I'm not going to be covering any of the expansions that are simply like, a fifth player expansion or anything like that. So I'm not going to cover that stuff. Just a FYI going through the rest of the video. Now, the next game that came out was Rising Sun. Now, Rising Sun has you playing as these Japanese clans or Chinese. And as these clans, your whole goal is to control the areas in the game and go from place to place, winning battles through the form of mandates, war phase, and potentially alliances. Now, in this one, you have an opportunity where you have 3 ages, very similar to Blood Rage, and in each age, you're going to have an opportunity to ally with someone. When you're allied with somebody during the action phases, both of you will get bonuses when you take actions. Now, all of these actions are going to lead up to one giant war phase where you're going to be going in this priority order down from battle to battle to fight each other. Now, that being said, this game employs a lot of interesting mechanics. First off, the action phase system is a Puerto Rico style where somebody plays the tile, everybody gets to do the action, but you're going to get it the best possible way and with a bonus. If you're allied, you also get a bonus and your ally gets the bonus, which is cool. The other thing that's interesting is you have the battle phase itself, where you have that numbered battle system. You know what's going to happen. You're going to be planning to maybe win some, lose others, but in that battle, you'll be using this auction system and potentially winning points through that. There's also a market of cards you can buy, god powers that you can use, but in general, this one is more of a negotiation strategy game where you are going to be playing off of what other people are doing as opposed to the agency that you find in a game like Blood Rage. This one has a lot of you hoping that somebody does something and then reacting to that. So that is Rising Sun. Now, Rising Sun introduces a couple of expansions here, where first one is Kami Unbound. In the main game, you have these Kami figures that you will be sending Shinto to, and they will give you special abilities. In this game, in addition to those abilities, they also give you the ability to actually summon those gods onto the board as figures. It really increases the potency of the strength of those gods just even more. It makes it even more worth it to send those prayers out there. It's also going to include an additional set of cards that you can use to vary your game, which I think is really cool. Now, you might like this if you want more complexity, more changes to the game. This might be something that you stay away from, though, if it might feel like it's just another big thing that's added to the game. So it's kind of got its ups and downs here. The next expansion here is the Dynasty Invasion. Now, this one has you adding Chinese gods and Chinese factions to the game. These two factions only can use their specific gods, but none of the other players can. It also adds a new set of cards, which is really cool. I really like just the addition of sets. It also is going to add new player boards and new additional player count, so you can play this game with up to 6, I believe, if you incorporate this additional expansion. So I really enjoy this one, actually. I think it's really cool. I think that there are 2 very different flavored clans, but one of the pros here definitely is the extra set of cards, as well as these 2 unique factions with new monsters. The con here, though, is the clans have that exclusivity to monsters, so they always have a strategy they can go to. Other players sometimes cannot stop them or derail them, so sometimes when you play with this clan, if somebody picks the moon, somebody might pick the sun, just so that they can prevent that other person from taking those additional actions. But the thing that really kills me with this one is actually the moon clan. One con of the game overall is that the game has you reacting to what a lot of your opponents do, and you don't really get to choose what you do on your turn a lot of the times. You have to just kind of play on the whims of others. With the Moon Clan, their whole shtick is if they have 2 units in an area, they can't summon anymore, and they go last when they're actually picking actions. So this can be really detrimental if somebody plays a summon mandate right off the bat and they're not able to actually summon any characters because their land's full. This can be a really rough start for the Moon Clan, and I've seen a lot of people get really sour on this from that initial turn. So just something to be aware of when you play as the Moon Clan, that you're really at the mercy of the others here. Now, the other small expansion-ish is the Kickstarter exclusives. This is the Daimyo Box, so this is going to include a whole bunch of monsters, 3D components. Now, this one is incredibly awesome. The variance that you get from the monsters is huge. The Fox Clan is a whole new clan with a new ability. Really like that. You also are going to get more creatures. You're going to get 3D components and just really deluxified components in general. You're going to get these mandate tiles that are chunky and big. This is one of those upgrades that, oh man, I don't know how I'd feel about playing the game if it wasn't this upgraded version, because man, it is just so nice. I really like this upgrade. Now, the con to that is this this quality is pretty dang amazing. And seeing as something like this is missing from the base game it's really unfortunate. So I really do like this one. So that is Rising Sun and kind of my thoughts on that overall. Up next and last, we have On Gods of Egypt. Now, this is the newest one. You play as the actual god itself. In those other two games, gods were an expansion that you can introduce, and you could worship them, or they could get summoned, they could fight for you, or you're trying to impress them, please them. In this one, you're the god. Your whole shtick is you are trying to basically become the object of worship in Egypt. The society is switching from polytheism to monotheism, and you want to be the standalone god. Now, you're going to do this by putting out all of these monuments on the board, controlling them, and then going through battles in order to win victories and control the monuments in those battles, have characters there when they actually happen. So there's two ways to score things, whether through battle or through control, but both are equally important. And then the monuments might be more important than the battles themselves sometimes, but the battles are going to be ways that you're going to set up monuments. So very similar to Rising Sun, you have that battle system where you start from 1 and go to 6, and earlier battles are going to help you in later battles, and you have lots of choices with how you're going to play. You have a set stack of cards that you're going to be using for this combat. There's just a lot of clever mechanics in here. Now, biggest pro in this game has to be the simplicity of the actions, very similar to Blood Rage. You have agency on your turn. You're going to be doing one of these actions in these 4 rows, and then if you eventually get them to the end, an event may trigger, and that's how you're going to do fights. You're going to be taking control of outposts. And the combat itself is also extremely straightforward and simple, where it's not as complicated or well thought out of, not well thought out, but you can't plan ridiculous amounts for the battle, and as in Rising Sun, it's not as quick and snappy as Blood Rage, where Blood Rage simply has you play a card, reveal it, and resolve it. In this one, it's kind of a combination of the two, where you're going to be picking a card in your hand, put it face down, reveal it, and then you'll resolve a sequence of events, and then you'll score during the battle, and then you move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. So it has an interesting mesh of the two, combat and action systems, which I think is a great mix. I really like this one. I think they did a fantastic job. Now let's go ahead and move on to the additional expansions. So first off for this one is the Tomb of Wonders. This is the upgrades as well as extras from the Kickstarter. This is going to include upgraded components, so these are going to be just replacements for the tokens of the base game. You're also going to get additional god factions. You have Ta and Sobek. They're going to come with all the pieces required for them. Very awesome, very cool. They work very differently. This is just more variants. It's fantastic, frankly. And the other thing that you will get in this expansion content is the Pharaoh Expansion. Now this one I'm a little torn on this one. In this game you are going to add political cards, and political cards are going to add complexity and additional actions on your turn. And the way you're going to get these is by putting these priests into this temple here. So whenever you summon a character, you're also going to put one in this temple. And whenever a monument is taken over, you are going to remove your priests here if you're winning the majority in them, and you'll get an effect. And a lot of these effects are going to have you adding political cards to your hands. And these political cards vary in power and utility, but they are so strong. And if you're able to get a lot of these cards early, it can really turbocharge you for the rest of the game and just start getting you going very, very fast. They're very powerful cards. I'm not sure how I'm feeling with them. They are cool. They add more options. They definitely are very powerful, but they're going to change the game drastically. So this one is a little bit more intense of an expansion in my opinion, as opposed to the other games in Blood Rage and Rising Sun. This one really changes the dynamic of a game as a whole, because you have this additional huge set of cards that's going to add just this huge layer of complexity. But luckily this expansion is very easy to integrate. You're going to be simply just, if you have the playmat, you flip the mat over, and then you put the priest on the side, boom, you're ready to go. If you have the base game, it's just a separate board that you put to the side, and you put the cards at the bottom. It's very easy to integrate. It works extremely well. The rulebook's only like maybe 2 pages long for this expansion, but it works really nicely. Now, one thing I didn't mention with the Tomb of Wonders was there's actually another expansion in here. It's the Petsucho expansion, I believe is what it's called. It's a giant creature. It's like this big crocodile thing, and his whole shtick is he is a 3-strength unit that is given to the player who is in last place. And that's it. That's all he does. but I think that's really cool. It's a nice catch-up mechanism. It makes it so that the player in last is getting more additional points later and potentially catching up, so that way the merge mechanic, when the second to last player drops, it's not going to be as terrifying. Oh, and that's something that I forgot to add, is this game has a very interesting mechanic in it where it is going to merge the players who are in third and fourth at the end of the third conflict phase. Or if you're playing with five, if you're playing with the fourth and fifth player will merge. The way that works is the higher player drops down to the lower player, and in exchange for the lower player losing all their monuments, their powers, and kind of assuming and being assimilated into that third player, they are going to, in exchange, be able to have a lot of manipulation and control of actions in the future. Those two players are going to combine their powers for a very unique combination, combine their guardians, give each other the worshippers, so the currency in the game, and they're going to charge forward. Now, this is a very polarizing mechanic in this game. This might be a huge con in this game as a whole, where your characters might, this might be something that you just avoid altogether. There are scenarios where you can play without it. This gives a feeling to the player who is being, kind of absorbed by the higher player that, they've been eliminated pseudoly. I have not had the experience where I'm the person who gets the merge done to them, but I have lost to somebody who has been merged. So I have seen it be a very powerful catch-up mechanic. I've seen it be a very different change to the game, and when it happens, it really does change the way the game feels, because now the players that are merged, they're able to plan and strategize against you directly. They're able to control and manipulate a lot of the board, and it puts you in very tough binds and very tough situations as the non-merged players, where these other people are, combining their forces and colluded against you, but in a way that is going to hopefully rocket them up. So I found this one very fascinating, and that's the merge mechanic. But the Petsucho here, he has a very cool ability where he's going to help propel that player up into a higher standing, so that way when the merge happens, it's not as devastating for that other player. Now, Pantheon is the next expansion here, and Pantheon is simply just more characters. This one's going to give you 5 more gods, 4 more gods, 4 more gods, and some storage spots. So I think this one's pretty straightforward. More powers, more variants, seems great to me. I really like this one. I like just more stuff expansions, and this does a great job. Now, that is kind of an overview of the games as a whole. We have lots of different choices, lots of different games that all fall in this area control, characters on a map. You have all these things fighting. But what is the best one in my opinion? Now I'm going to go backwards. We're going to start off with my number 3. It's Rising Sun. I don't know if I was very clear with it earlier, but this one is fun. This one is cool. This one has a lot of interesting mechanisms. But the thing that is the one that really sets it back for me is you are kind of letting other people control your game. It's a lot of passive responses to things, and you don't really have that much agency in the game. You are going to be making decisions here. You're going to be doing things, but only every so often. You are doing them usually in reaction to somebody else, or somebody is controlling what you can do. This is a game where you can sit there and you can look at what everybody has, and you know exactly what the plays can be. So it kind of is easy to make informed decisions, and if you really want to, everybody at the table could collude against a single person and bring them down, and it happens. So for that reason and for that agency, this is the one that is on the bottom for me. Now, that's not to say that this game isn't a blast. It's still an 8 out of 10 for me. It is so fun. The theme is incredible. The miniatures are beautiful. The map is beautiful. And the combat system is so fun. So the combat system here is just so interesting. I love that you're going to be bidding on these different sections to get these war advantages. I love the way the Ronin token works, where you're going to be able to summon all these additional mercenaries to fight for you. I love that you're going to be earning a lot of points in different battles. So it's good to be in battles. It's good to move around. It's good to position yourself. And I love the way that you're going to score points at the end of the game for the different areas that you've won the majorities in. And that is so awesome to me. It encourages you to move around. It encourages you to interact with other players, but it also might encourage you to stay in certain areas so that you're able to prevent other people from winning them. I really like the alliance system in this game. there's a lot to love in Rising Sun, but it does come in my number 3 spot for this comparison in particular. Now, my number 2 game from this list is actually going to be the newest. It's Ankh Gods of Egypt. I think that this game is a blast. I love how simple the action system is. I love that it keeps the agency from Blood Rage, but it adds that structured battle phase that exists in Rising Sun. That's my favorite part of Rising Sun. I really like the card playing system here. I love that you're able to use the cards and then you're able to reclaim them back, and so you can kind of nail down what people are doing, and you have some form of prediction, but no information in this game is perfect, and I really like that. I love how the battles kind of, result from that. I love that your decisions affect the entire game. I love that your decisions are going to affect even just that next player's turn right away, but I also like how easy things are so that somebody's not going to sit there for a while kind of planning things out and making sure that they're making the exact best move. They're able to react easily and efficiently to the board, but in a fantastic way. I love the battle system. I love the asymmetry in the game. I love that you have that kind of starting player power, very similar to Rising Sun, but I also like that you are able to customize yourself as you play the game. Now, that being said, sometimes you may find yourself kind of drawn to certain abilities more than other people. Certain gods work with certain abilities more, and you might find yourself going down those routes. But I think there's enough variance of the game and lots of scenarios that are going to change up the way that these things happen. So my favorite part in Ankh Gods of Egypt has to be the card system. I love the battle. I love the way it works. I love how you are trying to do the best you can to not only predict what people are going to be doing, but to protect your units, to build monuments, and to gain advantages from those monuments. The importance of devotion and kind of the race against time, I think, is really cool. And the merge mechanic for me seems like a really interesting, catch-up mechanism, even though it may seem at first like something that is not worth it and very detrimental, it just maybe as a player. So I'm very curious to know what you think if you've experienced this. Once again, in all the games that I've played, I have not been the person who is merged, so I'm curious to know more on this. So I wish I could tell you, but this is a game that when you play it, it's up to you, right? It's whoever is playing. It's very interesting. Now, the next thing, and obviously the last one here, number 1, is going to be Blood Rage. So I think Blood Rage is a phenomenal design. This game is in my top 5 games of all time. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think that the drafting of this game is so well done. I love that you are able to pick this hand of cards. Every choice hurts, but it's in such a good way because you're always getting something you like, and you're going to see how these choices play out in a very quick, very succinct, very well done action phase. You're able to use these action points, and you have to prioritize doing specific things over others. You're reacting to the players, but in a quick manner. You're able to quickly join a fight, quickly resolve. The fights are so simple, it encourages you to care about positioning so you can join other battles. This is such a solid system. I love it. I love the asymmetry. I love how the cards are going to make you unique. I love that your models are special to you. I love the strength and impact of the monsters here and the tough choices that comes to just which 2 are you going to be using at a certain time. I love how the cards scale. I love everything about this game. I think I find myself having trouble finding flaws with this one. I think it does a fantastic job. I think the theme is so strong, so cool. This game is pretty dang incredible. So I really enjoy Blood Rage. It's absolutely wonderful. And once again, my favorite thing in Blood Rage has to be the cards. I think that this system is so good. It is so well done. I really, really, really like this. I just love everything about this. I love the card play in this one. Now that is the Showdown. Blood Rage, Rising Sun, and Ankh Gods of Egypt. So the best one, in my opinion, Blood Rage, with Ankh Gods of Egypt coming in second, and Rising Sun at the bottom. These are all fantastic games. I recommend them all. I think that they are so fun. I think that they very much, represent this fun mythology. I think that the battles are exciting. The gameplay is fun, and it's something that you are going to talk about for a while after you play. They're great to get into. They're a blast. These are just a lot of fun. If you have any questions about anything that you heard here, please please leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. What's your rating? Do you prefer, Rising Sun the most? I know that we recently just played about 2 hours ago, actually. We just finished another game of Ankh, and everybody at the table had a different favorite. We had one person who loved Rising Sun, one person who loved Ankh, and me, of course, I had Blood Rage was the one that I really enjoyed. So we have lots of different opinions here, and I guess it just depends on the player, right, and what they value in their games. And I hope that this gave you a nice overview of the three, that maybe you can figure out which one that you want to bring to the table on your game night. So thank you again so much for watching SideGame Strong. Now, really quick though, I do want to add one more thing that I forgot to mention, and that is going to be the additional part of the Pharaoh Expansion. So in the Pharaoh Expansion, I forgot to talk about the Pharaohs. So the Pharaohs here are really interesting, and just the Ankh as a whole is really interesting in the way that the variability is dealt with. So the way the variability works in Ankh is that you have a scenario book, and this scenario book is going to change how the game is played, whether it just be with the starting buildings or with the different tiles that you can add to the game that add special abilities. The Pharaoh Expansion adds to that dramatically. Now, in addition to adding those political cards, each Pharaoh is also going to add its own Pharaoh card, and this is going to do something that, it's going to affect the game in some way. So the Pharaoh is going to influence the people of Egypt somehow. So you might have it's an actual miniature. So he's a big golden miniature. He's going to be going around the table. And he is going to affect the region he's in. And one of those actions that's on the priest board here is moving the Pharaoh somewhere. So the one we just played there, we've played 2 times with the Pharaohs. The first one that we played with, the Pharaoh, when he was on the board, he would give you extra points every time you gain devotion in this region. So powerful, so cool. The other important thing was whenever you built a Sphinx, which is one of the options here, you actually get to, in addition to building the Sphinx, and it counts as like a wild monument, you also get to activate the Pharaoh's ability. And the Pharaoh's ability in this one was you draw extra political cards and you keep one. So this way you were able to get a lot more of these political cards. Very powerful because you were able to pick the best one. So good. Now the other important thing was these Pharaohs are completely different. Some are going to introduce new tokens, and some are going to change the dynamics of the game greatly. The other one that we played with was Xerxes, and his effect was when he's in a region, you can't score points where he's at. That's terrifying because right off the bat, remember in the end of round 4, if you're not in the blue section, you're going to lose. And there's lots of ways to kind of dock people in devotion, especially if you're playing with Xerxes, though. You've got ways that your devotion is really going to get halted. So that is a drastic change to the game. So I think for variance alone, just from like the way that the game is played or thought about, I think that Ankh does an incredible job at that. So I did want to make sure that I mentioned that at the end of this video. So sorry I didn't mention it earlier, but hopefully you found me in the timestamps or something so that you saw it here. But that really is everything this time. So without further ado, thanks so much for watching SideGame Strong.